Today I'm reviewing The Swimmer, the 1968 film adaptation of John Cheever's short story. The story follows Nettie Merrill, a man who decides to swim home through his neighbor's pools, imagining them as a kind of river that will carry him back to his house. What starts as a confident, almost playful idea slowly becomes unsettling as Nettie's sense of time, social standing, and reality begin to fracture. Cheever's story is quiet and restrained, and the discomfort builds gradually. The film takes a very different approach. Overall, I think The Swimmer is a successful adaptation, but not a faithful one. Where the story allows denial to creep in quietly, the film turns that denial into something loud, visible, and emotional. And that choice reshapes how we experience Nettie's collapse. One of the first things the film does is announce that it will not be subtle. It opens with sweeping shots of nature, operatic music, and Nettie running through the woods like a child at play. None of this exists in Cheever's story. On the page, Nettie begins in motion, but not in spectacle. In Cheever's version, moments like this line about breathing deeply feel calm on the surface, but carry an undercurrent of desperation. Nettie isn't just enjoying the summer. He's trying to inhale it, as if holding on to sensation can slow down time itself. There's something quietly manic beneath the pleasure. The film doesn't trust that restraint. Music swells, emotions are amplified, and Lancaster's performance makes the unraveling visible almost immediately. Rather than slowly realizing something's wrong, the audience is cued from the start. The result is effective, but it sacrifices the eerie uncertainty that gives the story its power. The film doesn't trust that quiet tension. Instead, it externalizes everything. Music swells, emotions are amplified. I've repeated myself and I recorded so many times, I'm sorry. The most dramatic departure from Cheever's story is the film's heavy sexualization of Nettie. In the text, Nettie is socially oblivious and emotionally detached, but he never comes across as predatory. The film turns him into somebody who flirts constantly, touches women without hesitation, and fixates sexually on nearly every woman he encounters. The addition of Julie, a young woman who once babysat his children, is especially disturbing. Their scenes introduce an inappropriate dynamic that never existed in the story and fundamentally alters how we read Nettie. What was once a denial of his situation or becomes a sort of an entitlement. This change removes much of the ambiguity that made Cheever's character unsettling. In the story, we never fully know what Nettie did to lose his family. In the film, his behavior feels like an explanation. By making his moral failure explicit, the film narrows the mystery and strips away his sympathy far too early. Cheever's ending is sudden and emotionally cold. Nettie arrives home, finds it empty, and the story ends almost immediately. There's no reflection, no explanation, no emotional release. The realization simply lands. The film lingers on this moment. Lancaster collapses, cries, and the music tells us how to feel. While the performance is powerful, I prefer the story's ending. It mirrors denial itself. It's abrupt, unforgiving, and irreversible. The film wants of release. Cheever refuses that. Burt Lancaster's performance completely reshapes how we understand Nettie Merrill. In Cheever's story, Nettie's collapse happens mostly inside of his head. On the screen, Lancaster turns that internal denial into something physical, public, and increasingly embarrassing. He plays Nettie as emotionally immature, smiling too wide, clinging too hard, and refusing to recognize when people clearly want distance from him. There's a childlike optimism to his performance that feels out of place as the film goes on, and that mismatch is uncomfortable to watch. What Lancaster does well is make denial visible. You see it in his posture, his voice, and his inability to adjust when the social world no longer reflects the version of himself he believes in. Even as doors close and people pull away, he keeps performing the same role, convinced it will still work. This version of Nettie isn't subtle, but it is effective. Lancaster turns what was quiet psychological unraveling in the story into something public and humiliating, which aligns with the film's broader decision to externalize the collapse rather than let it remain internal and ambiguous. Downside is we lose some of his internal dialogue. The film's visual choices consistently push Nettie's collapse outward. Early pools are pristine, private, and controlled. Later spaces become colder, louder, and more public, culminating in the public pool where Nettie is openly mocked, confronted, humiliated, even told his kids don't respect him, crash up cars drunk, all that. Unlike the story, which uses Nettie's internal monologue to convey contempt and discomfort, the film externalizes that hostility. People shout at him, accuse him of debts, and openly mock his former wealth. From the household taste for Dijon mustard to French deli, they pull no punches. The timeline becomes less symbolic and more literal, and the ambiguity of time collapsing into a single day is replaced with a clearer narrative of financial and social ruin. The film also fails to capture the gentle time warp of Cheever's text, replacing it with a strange flashback, montage-type shots between pools. This shift makes the film's message easier to grasp, but less haunting. What Cheever lets remain vague and psychological, highly internal, the film turns into a public spectacle. Overall, I'd give The Swimmer 4 out of 5 stars. It captures the emotional weight and surreal premise of Cheever's story, but it trades restraint for spectacle. Where that story allows denial to remain quiet and unsettling, the film forces it into the open. Both versions work, but they do different things. If Cheever's story is about denial creeping in quietly, the film is about denial crashing down loudly. And while I prefer the story's restraint, the film remains memorable because of Lancaster's performance and its striking visual choices. What interested me most about the adaptation of the story is that it makes Nettie's denial way easier to recognize, but also somehow less disturbing. Cheever's refusal to explain forces the reader to wonder what went wrong in Nettie's life and leaves you feeling sympathetic and wondering how easily a great life can be turned upside down. As a husband and father, Cheever's text left me thinking and reflecting, but the film left me disgusted with Nettie's actions and entirely lacking in sympathy for him. No ambiguity, no reflection, just judgment. Thanks for listening to my review, and I hope you guys enjoyed the semester. Take care.